Welcome to Crappy to Happy podcast, a special series on our Sacred Stories podcast dedicated to sharing the incredible stories of grit, grace, and love in our new book, Crappy to Happy, Sacred Stories of Transformational Joy. I am your host, Rev Ariel Patricia, and together we will answer the question, do bad things happen to good people, or could the difficulties we face be gifts in disguise? Today we are speaking with Laura Staley, whose story in Crappy to Happy is titled, He Had Me at Mary Oliver. Laura is the author of the book Live Inspired and the co-founder of Cherish Your World. Laura passionately helps people thrive by guiding them to holistic transformations for home, heart, and life. As a columnist, Laura writes personal essays focused on self-discovery, feng shui, emotional health, and transformations from the inside out. And so welcome, Laura Staley, to Crappy to Happy.
Thank you so much, Ariel. It's wonderful to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you. Full disclosure, Laura is a Sacred Stories author, and her book, Live Inspired, is published by Sacred Stories, and it's a phenomenal book. And we're just delighted that you're also a part of Crappy to Happy.
Yeah, it was really wonderful to have an opportunity to submit this particular essay to this book. So I'm honored and humbled.
It's just such a great, great, great story. So He Had Me at Mary Oliver. Tell our audience what your story is about.
Well, my story is about dating after a 22-year marriage came to an end. Oh, goodness. I was encouraged to go online. I had no idea what I was doing. I really needed a Sherpa guide, a guide to that world. And as I was getting to the questions about what my handle was, because of course you're not to use your own name, I sat there thinking about the beautiful poetry of Mary Oliver. And one of my favorite poems by her is titled Wild Geese. And so I made my handle Wild Geese, M-O, standing for Mary Oliver, 11, thinking that the dude out in internet land would know absolutely what I was talking about, what that all stood for. And the next day on this particular site, oh my gosh, it just blew up. I had all these messages and I kind of got scared because I didn't know what I was doing and sort of panicked. But then I got brave and saw this one that came in from Passion Play 69. And I thought to myself, again, how naive I was. Oh, this gentleman was born in 1969. Let's see what he has to say. And he shared, oh gosh, I enjoy the Ohio State Buckeyes and football. I like hiking in the woods. I enjoy social drinking. I'm just a social drinker. And do you like s'mores? And do you enjoy hiking in the woods? And I replied back, oh, I'm good with all those things. I enjoy the Buckeyes. I enjoy hiking in the woods. I don't drink. I'm not a drinker, but I have plenty of friends who drink socially, and I don't have a problem with that. But in terms of the s'mores, I'm actually gluten-free. I haven't had a s'more in years, but the chocolate and marshmallows, I'm down with that. And I hit send, and I went on a run the next day and got reflecting about Passion Play 69. And all of a sudden it hit me what that actually really meant. And later that day, I went to meet with a friend of mine who was like, oh my gosh, wait, Laura, what? You had wild in your handle? No, oh my gosh, no wonder it was blowing up. You don't put wild in anything with dudes on the internet. Oh my gosh. And don't you know about Urban Dictionary? And thank goodness you figured out what Passion Play 69 was. And oh my God, I was just so embarrassed. I was just like, oh my God. I was like, no, I have no idea what Urban Dictionary is. And she goes, oh, well, we got to look up wild, and we're going to look up s'mores. And oh my gosh. And of course she did. And she let me know what those were. And I was like horrified. I shut that all down and decided that I just wasn't really quite ready to date. And I needed to do that deeper work of loving myself, because obviously after a marriage ends, you question your worth, your value, your lovability. I think for a lifetime, I have wanted to figure out what it would be like to be deeply loved and accepted exactly for who I am in an intimate relationship, and it just hadn't happened. So I went about the business of taking actions to really begin to heal deeply from the inside, to value myself. I did date a gentleman that I met business networking. That lasted for about 6 months. I learned a lot about myself. I held space and noticed and observed a lot of familiar patterns that hadn't worked in the past, and they were being repeated. I was responding in a very different way. So that was the good news. But this gentleman's ways of interacting with me were just, I know they came from insecurities, and he would often be like, oh, that was just a joke. And, come up when I was business networking and say to the person, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about. And gee, here I am introducing myself to somebody brand new. And wow, it didn't feel good. even though he, owned that he was he even said it this way, that he was a smart ass, but it burned me, and finally I came clean in that relationship and let it go. I fessed up and said, gosh, this is just not working. You're not a bad person. It's just not a good fit for me. This is just a familiar pattern that I've been down of, a mixture of insecurity and arrogance, and continued my work. And then I heard about singles mingles. I collaged, I journaled for 21 days about the kind of person that I would really like to meet. And I found it really helpful to have these 36 questions that I was answering for 45 minutes a day. And I love to write, and I cried. I cried a lot. It's almost like when you really get in touch with what you really, really want, it can be incredibly emotional. So I discovered Singles Mingles, and I had a friend, and I just put down my $20 and said, I'm going to go. It's an in-person way to meet people, and maybe meet a gentleman. And I had a friend who said, oh, Laura, it's going to be all women. Why are you even bothering with this? And I said, well, if it is all women, I'll make some new friends. It's okay. Well, I attended, and there were 8 gentlemen and 4 ladies. And there was a gentleman who twinkled at me when I spoke, and we were having conversation about the things that I care the most about in the world: nature and art and travel, things that all of us seemed passionate about. We were kind of on one end of the table, and the gentleman reached out to me, and I'll just kind of leave it there as kind of a intrigue to find out what transpired after that. I'll leave it as a cliffhanger. How about that?
Well, the title is called He Had Me at Mary Oliver. So we are all rooting that there is a very happy ending in this story as well. I will ask you, though, to answer the question, could difficulties we face be gifts in disguise? Would you say, based on this experience, your answer would be yes?
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, because, obviously what transpired is, it's a really good ending. I promise you, it felt very magical to me. And what I now know is that it's possible to experience an all the way down good fit love relationship like the taste, the sight, the smell, the sound, the touch, the 5, 8, 9 sensory experience from the inside out is absolutely possible. And I've learned about loving myself and what it means to be loved by a person without expectations and from a great deal of acceptance. And it's just been exceptional. Yeah. And so out of the pain of feeling unlovable at my core, I think I know now what it feels like to love myself, to give love, have my love received and not deflected, and to have another person love me in all the languages of love. Right? Oh, wow.
Well, and you created this though, Laura. I mean, you have the courage to when a 22-year marriage, ended, you had the courage to reach out. You had the courage to do the work. You had the courage to be in a relationship with someone and recognize that you were repeating an old pattern, and that he didn't cherish you and value you, and it just makes me a little crazy when people are like, oh, I'm just a smartass, or oh, I was just kidding, but the dig gets in, when their own insecurities are projected on others. And you had the courage, that far after a divorce and still alone, to say, it's not a good fit. Like, we're not a good fit, and I need to continue my work, and to value and love yourself. And I think that's really important, that is acknowledged. It wasn't just, oh, I just have to kiss a bunch of frogs till I find my prince story.
Yeah, thank you, because it does take tremendous courage to keep your heart open, to heal your heart, and then put yourself out there in a vulnerable and open way to other people, and to attend that singles mingles event, and to walk into a room full of complete strangers. And I know for those of us who tend to a certain degree of introversion, I mean, I suppose I'm an ambivert. I mean, I can stand and talk in front of people, but I also, being a writer is such a private kind of activity, and it's one that you do alone, usually. Well, maybe in collaboration with an editor, but even then, the actual drafts, all those drafts are pouring from your own heart and mind out onto the tablet. So yeah, to step beyond those places of comfort, and be willing to love. Well, and it's interesting, Ariel, because I also confronted this from some women who were just like, forget men, you don't need a man. And it was so interesting, because I attempted to explain to them that it wasn't coming from a need. It really was a genuine desire, which is, I think, is so different. And look, I had no judgment that they were choosing to be single and they didn't ever want to date, and they were done. And they, maybe in some ways had closed their heart, or maybe not. Maybe they just made a choice to be single, and I celebrate that. But I really wanted the experience. I love the companionship of men. I enjoy men's company, and to actually have the courage to step out there and be willing to say, yes, I'm open to having another intimate partner, even after all the failings I participated in, because I certainly was half of that failed marriage. To stand back up and put yourself out there, it actually shaking in the boots for sure, and yet well worth it, because I think the the aspiration was stronger than my fear.
And I think that what has to be noted also is that the courage came even though your heart was still wounded. You know what I mean? Even you were coming from a place of working through the pain. It wasn't like you were just showing up and, fully realized and in full confidence and with all great experiences behind you saying, oh yeah, I'm just looking for the next one or the right one. I mean, you were coming from a place of, as many do, coming from a place of having, to deal with feelings of unlove or, lack of self-love. And that seems to be a very common at the core of the human experience, at least lately.
Right. Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. And even in the space of this new relationship, there was continued healing from the inside out. And I noticed that, receiving authentic, genuine kindness from another human being, um, like allowing it to land on the heart and seep into the heart, is a whole different experience. And of course, I had trained myself in being polite when people were kind to me and saying thank you and being gracious, but it was with my hands and a wall around my heart, doing the social the correct social expectation of that interaction, and yet not generally letting it into the heart. And it's its own that's its own level of another layer of healing, and I would say even transformation. Correct. So yeah, I mean, I wasn't fully cooked, as they say. Like my heart wasn't completely healed. There were still a lot of places of vulnerability and areas that I knew I was bruised, if you will.
Right. So he had me at Mary Oliver. There's a version of that story in your book, Live Inspired. And your book, Live Inspired, is filled with just these very beautiful, honest, raw, vulnerable, real, real life stories of your life, of experiences of your life that where you weren't receiving, even as a young child, the type of relationships or the type of emotional, reciprocity, maybe you'd say that you should have, or that would be expected. Just in I'd say in like one or two sentences, again, just to kind of give our audience an idea, your book, Live Inspired, how would you describe it, and what was your reason for writing Live Inspired as well?
Oh, that's a great question. I think, well, definitely brave, honest, radical, honest self-discovery, and the wisdom I've gleaned along the way that I know I've heard from other readers, that they recognize themselves. Maybe they don't have the exact same story, but there's something that resonates with their life experience of being either feeling excluded or rejected or betrayed or unloved, and then what happened to overcome that. How do we go about living lives that we're creating from love and with love and kindness and compassion. So my reason for writing it was to take all those hard things and the things that I've learned, and to share them in a really honest and open and vulnerable way, so that others could see themselves and possibly feel seen and heard and valued, to know that they're not alone, that I've walked inside all of those places that they may very likely, as a human being on the planet, experienced in some form of fashion, those emotional places that all of us can go, whether it's the loss of a relationship or the death of a loved one or a challenge with a child, right, who's living through difficulties. The difficulties may be different, but those feelings often are very similar in what people navigate. And then how you rise and come through all of the challenge, and that it's possible, that it's actually possible to take new actions and have new thoughts and set down the limiting beliefs and feel new feelings in your heart, and just stay open to what's next and what life brings. Because in any given day, there'll be moments that are challenging, and likely be moments, if you're paying attention, to beauty and joy and grace.
And that's why I love Live Inspired. And that is the heart of Crappy to Happy. That's the heart of Sacred Stories, is that through the sharing of our stories, not only is there a healing within ourselves, but is the offering to others to be open to knowing that there is healing for them as well, or there is hope for them, right? And there is community and there is communion with others when we read their stories, and know that their story is our story.
Oh, absolutely. And I think those have been my favorite stories. The people who have overcome really, really hard things and are creative and contributing and standing in their joy and willing to be open and passionate and vulnerable at the same time, right? That birthplace of innovation and creativity, and to be creative and to belong to themselves, to just really live true to themselves, is such a joy. And to have become that in my own eyes is its own humbling gift.
It is a gift.
And to give it away. Absolutely. Just like you said.
Yes, a gift to receive and a gift to give away. Laura Staley, your website is cherishyourworld.com.
Correct.
I encourage everyone to visit cherishyourworld.com, find out about the beautiful work that Laura Staley does. She lives her work, and her story, He Had Me at Mary Oliver, that is in Crappy to Happy, is one of many stories that is in Laura's book, Live Inspired. And Laura, you are an inspiration, and the way you live your life is an inspiration, and the way that you share with others is an inspiration. And I just want to say thank you for being my guest today and for being an author in Crappy to Happy.
Thank you so much, Ariel. It was an honor to be in this conversation, and I'm just very, very grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, it's my honor as well. And so, listeners, you've been listening to Laura Staley, cherishyourworld.com. Her story is He Had Me at Mary Oliver, which is in Crappy to Happy, Sacred Stories of Transformational Joy, which is available through Amazon and booksellers worldwide, or direct through Sacred Stories Publishing. I encourage you to pick a copy up today, because it really is just an off-the-charts compilation of beautiful stories. And He Had Me at Mary Oliver is an example of one of them. And thank you for listening today to our special series, Crappy to Happy, on the Sacred Stories podcast. I am your host, Rev Ariel Patricia. And until next time, as always, I encourage you to write your sacred story well.